All right, so we are today going to take a look at another kind of phenomenon that takes place around the turn of the century and a little bit before. From about the 1860s to about 1910, we're going to see the growth and domination of political machines. So today we're going to be talking about Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall and these political machines. Now, very simply, a political machine is just an organization that really is aimed at gaining control, power, influence uh, over government. They're going to extend their influence over a lot of different areas, but it's always over or about gaining money and control. And so I'm going to blow up. I love political cartoons. Here is a political cartoon about the city of New York being under the thumb of a political boss, William Boss Tweed. We'll learn more about him, but I think that's a very appropriate image because it was absolutely true at the time. The bosses controlled city politics. The bosses controlled everything. The machines are run by these bosses. The bosses then give out things like jobs, city contracts. They do favors. They help immigrants find housing and kind of get a foothold in the country. And so that's kind of how they operate. They operate by controlling government contracts and jobs and those sorts of things. Now, immigrants will often turn to these political machines because it's hard being an immigrant. It's hard coming to a new country. And in order to bypass maybe some of the discrimination and the red tape and the systems and processes that you're not familiar with and don't trust, a lot of these people were fleeing corrupt governments and governments that were persecuting them. And so they were distrustful and didn't understand how to operate here. Well, the bosses kind of short-circuited that. They offered them a way around it. So the immigrants could turn to them and get help. Now, in exchange for that help, these guys aren't just doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. They want something, right? Nobody does anything for free. They want something. So these machines are going to offer jobs. They're going to offer housing. They're going to help you navigate maybe legal waters in the United States and kind of get your footing. But in exchange, they expect to be able to direct your vote. You're going to vote the way they tell you to vote because of the favors they've done for you. These machines are corrupt. They would use intimidation. They would use violence to gain and maintain control over city politics and the populations of people that they served. Ultimately, I think you can probably best think of these people as a cross between a corrupt politician and a mafia boss, right? If they got together and had a baby, it would be a city boss. That's as close an analogy as I can make. Now, what we're going to see is these corrupt bosses are going to influence government in many ways by gaining information. What do I mean by that? Gaining information. If you're part of the inner circle of politics, you kind of know things about the city that maybe other people don't know, or at least you know it beforehand. So if you know that the city is planning to build a park and you know the prospective site, but it's not public knowledge, you have the opportunity then ahead of time to go and buy up land at that prospective site in order to then sell it to the city at an inflated cost, or buy up property around the park because green space means that property values go up. So having information is power. They also got kickbacks. They would overcharge for contracts. There were any number of ways in which these guys were lining their pockets. Being in control of knowledge really does have some benefits. Now, these machines cost the taxpayer millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they undermine democratic elections. And so, there are people that will say, and rightfully so, that the machines were providing a service to the immigrant communities, that the machines were aiding the immigrant communities in ways that the government could not or would not. And that because of that, the machines weren't all bad. And I suppose you might be able to make that argument, but the flip side of that is at what cost? Because it cost the taxpayers millions of dollars, and it kind of took away or disenfranchised them because the corruption of the vote. They were directing votes. It wasn't that people were voting in their own best interest. They were voting the way they were told to vote. The counting of the vote was corrupt. There were all sorts of different things. So is the cost of helping the immigrant communities get settled here worth paying if it is the loss of free and fair democratic elections? Is it worth it if the cost is inflated taxes because so much wasteful spending is being done or money is being stolen? And I guess that depends on who you ask, right? People are going to have different perspectives on that particular thing. Now, William Boss Tweed, we've seen his image a couple of different times, right? In cartoon, he was often drawn and kind of poked at. But Boss Tweed runs Tammany Hall. Now, Tammany Hall is the name of the political machine. It's kind of this tavern-like place where they would meet. So it's called Tammany Hall, and it's New York City's democratic political machine. Boss Tweed was king. Very, very powerful. What we're going to see is that through his ring of people, through his machine, Tweed's Tammany Hall steals over $300 million from the city of New York, from the taxpayers of New York. Now, that's a big sum of money today, but this was in the 1860s and 1870s. And so if we adjust it for inflation today, just to give you some sense of how big this situation really was, it would equate to $7 billion. Now, that is a much larger sum of money, and that is a very serious issue, right? $7 billion stolen. Absolutely incredible. Most of that theft came through the building of this building right here. This is the New York City courthouse, or it was Tweed Courthouse. Because of his positions of power in government and influence, he was able to control the construction. He wins the bid to construct this. And then he's going to hand out the contracts for all of the different jobs, the plaster, the moldings, the windows, the carpet, you name it, right? Whatever had to be done to construct this building, he was in charge of handing out those jobs, which meant that he had more, favors to do for immigrants and so forth to continue to garner that support. But he also was overcharging the city with every step in the process. And if you've ever undergone a building process, there are a lot of different steps you have to undertake. And for every one of those, he was charging double, triple, quadruple the amount of money that he should and pocketing it. So I actually heard or read something somewhere where they estimated that for what this courthouse cost the city of New York, they could have built over a dozen of these courthouses, right? That's how much overage there was that went into Boss Tweed's pocket. Tweed's corruption was brought to the public eye through the works of this man. This is Thomas Naste, and he is a very famous political cartoonist. You know his work, even if you don't think you know his work. He is the one that popularized and created the very first images of the Republican Democratic Party, the elephant and the donkey. He has popularized the modern day image of Santa Claus by doing work in advertising and all sorts of different things. What we'll see is that he discovers what Boss Tweed is doing and begins to draw all sorts of political cartoons that paint Boss Tweed as this larger-than-life, criminal, corrupt person who's pulling the strings of government. And of course, he was. Thomas Naste is right. But Thomas Naste was incorruptible, meaning Boss Tweed tried to threaten him, tried to intimidate him. Thomas Naste was not threatened. He did not stop what he was doing. Boss Tweed tried to buy him off, tried to bribe him with a ridiculous amount of money. Thomas Naste wasn't taking it. The guy believed in the city of New York. He believed that corruption should be stopped, and he continued to publish cartoons to that effect. When Boss Tweed his actions are brought into the daylight where the public can see it, he's no longer really able to operate the way he once did. There's too much heat. There's too much scrutiny. So ultimately, Boss Tweed is going to be arrested, and he dies in jail. But that doesn't end the machines. A new boss just kind of takes his place. It goes on for decades. There's going to have to be major governmental change at the city level before this is able to be stopped. And some argue that it went on and kind of continues quietly, the corruption of these politicians. So anyway, that's a little bit about Boss Tweed. He's a fascinating character. I absolutely love Thomas Naste. I hope you learned something today. I hope you got something out of it. So if you would, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Watch some of the other videos and feel free to leave comments. I'd love to hear from you guys what you thought and if there was anything that I left out. So anyway, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching.